Hey, it's Manu with 22 Sound. Welcome to our weekly look at the upcoming vinyl release highlights. Just like every week, we have a nice mix of new records here for you. And we're looking today at release date August 19th, 2022. We're starting with Five Finger Death Punch. Their new album AfterLife is coming out. It's their 9th studio album, the first since 2007 without guitarist Jason Hook. He got replaced by Andy James. Yeah, Five Finger Death Punch, of course, one of the biggest metal bands in the world, probably at the moment, but also one of the most hated, I would say, and that's definitely something I noticed that happens a lot in the metal scene. I'm a big metal fan myself, but yeah, as soon as a metal band gets really big, there's usually the backlash and it's immediately not cool anymore to like them. And I find that sometimes a little bit ridiculous. Whether you like Five Finger Death Punch specifically or not, but in general I think it's a good thing if a band can reach a bigger audience and can get new people in, can serve basically as a gateway band. Been seeing it in recent weeks a lot with young music lovers coming in, getting Metallica's Massive Puppets because they heard about it in Stranger Things. And I know there's a lot of old school Metallica fans that find that a little strange that they just heard about them, but hey, I mean, you gotta start somewhere. And I think it's a good thing overall, because usually what happens if you really like a certain band, you like that style, you start digging a little deeper, you want to hear more of that, and then you go down the rabbit hole and you might find some really cool underground bands and start supporting them too. So I personally think it's a great thing if some bands can kind of reach higher levels of commercial success. I think that actually helps the community overall. That's just my 2 cents. All right, next up is Panic at the Disco. Their new album Viva Las Vengeance is their 7th studio album. And this is really a band that has been gaining new fans over the whole career, really young fans. Their last album, 2018's Pray for the Wicked, was a really big hit. And, well, maybe we shouldn't really call them a band anymore at this point, basically a solo project, but that's really not an easy thing. They've been able to appeal to a young, ever-evolving audience. We really see a lot of people here grabbing Panic at the Disco records that were probably barely alive when they first started out. So that's actually pretty impressive on their part, if you ask me. What we heard so far of this album, really grandiose, really theatrical. It's kind of a Queen-esque quality to some of their music that kind of combined with those emo pop vocals, if you will. I think those songs will definitely work really well in the really big venues they're playing on this tour. Viva Las Vengeance is the name of the new album. Next up is Soilwork with their new album Overgivenheten. Probably mispronounced that, but actually not Swedish, I'm Swiss. It's actually not the same thing, despite popular belief. But anyway, it's their 12th studio album. They've been around for a long time, legendary band of that melodic death metal scene of Scandinavia, especially Sweden, in the late 90s. And they were with their contemporaries a big influence on what later became metalcore, new wave of heavy American metal, American heavy metal, in the 2000s. And that kind of style really has seen a little bit of a resurgence too in the recent years. Soilwork to me always was kind of the most American sounding, if you will, of those melodic death metal bands from that kind of first era. They really embraced the kind of like big production, big hooks in their sound. And well, no wonder with a singer like Björn Strid. He's really an exceptional singer. He's been really busy in recent years with his other band Night Flight Orchestra, which they kind of paying homage to that AOR sound of the late 70s, early 80s. I've been just putting out countless records, can't keep up with them, but they're doing it at a really high quality level. So Björn here with Soilwork, he can growl again, but he also sings. He has a really wide range of styles that he can do. Really like the last album, actually, so I'm really curious to hear what they came up with here. Soilwork. Next up is Demi Lovato, another really big pop star. Yeah, she is coming out with a new album that is supposedly a really big departure from what she's done before. It's advertised as a full punk album. She actually even staged a funeral for her pop music. Very dramatic. But anyway, it's actually another trend that I find kind of interesting, that more and more pop stars are getting the guitars back a little bit. She's doing a pop punk album. Probably the biggest breakout star of the year last year was Olivia Rodrigo, and she definitely had a little bit of a rock edge to her music. We're actually kind of starting to hear that a little bit again, and I'm curious to see if maybe guitars are making a little bit of a comeback in the mainstream. And it would be kind of interesting if it actually came kind of from the top, that the big pop stars are incorporating that more. Maybe it kind of, you know, prepares the audience for more stuff to come. Hopefully, in my personal opinion, hopefully it will lead to the labels maybe taking more chances on young rock, punk, metal bands if they see that this is actually music that the public still wants, still likes, even though it might sound a little different than what we've heard in the past. I'm sure there's going to be people from the punk police that are not happy with it, but I personally like the trend, if it is a trend already. Next up is Babyface Ray. He is a rapper from Detroit. Been around for a little while, but really in the last few years he's been able to kind of gain a national audience, one of the rising stars in the hip-hop world. This album was, as we're kind of used to in the hip-hop world in these days, it was actually kind of released a few months ago on streaming services, finally getting a vinyl release. There's oftentimes a big gap between streaming release and vinyl release, but at least it's finally coming out. He actually got some high praise from high above. Tyler, the creator, named his song If You Know, You Know one of his favorite 2021 songs, and who would argue with Tyler? Certainly not me. Alright, last but not least is a little bit of a curveball, a very interesting record here. It's Heilung with their new album Drif. I would probably call that experimental folk, but folk not really in the American sense, you know, acoustic guitars, pretty songs, more in the like Nordic, European sense of the word. The members come from Denmark, Norway, and Germany, a really international band. And well, they're using old texts, runes, inscriptions from the Bronze, Iron, and Viking era and turn them into the lyrics for their songs. There's a lot of chanting going on. They use solely traditional instruments, stuff like horse skin drums or buffalo horn rattles. So yeah, that sounds very different than what we're used to in popular music, but very interesting band. They're really doing something very unique. So if you're looking for something a little bit different, this might be one to try out. It's coming out on Season of Mist, which is usually a big metal label, but this is definitely more that old, traditional, Viking-ish folk than it is metal. Hylung, Drif. Alright, as always, I like to point out, of course, this is just our subjective selection. We like to point out some records that we think are noteworthy, but there's much more to come out, and you can see that on our website, 22 Sound Records, and of course you can place your pre-orders for those records and many more, even way further down the line, straight on there. Don't forget to follow us on our social media too, at 22 Sound Records. We always put out records of the day, and those are like old, new, big stuff, underground stuff. It's a great way to discover some music, so if you ever don't know what to listen to, just go to our profile, scroll through it, and you might find something really cool. Alright, thank you all very much for watching. I hope to see you all next week again.